Welcome into Bama Central's Just a Minute alongside Austin Hannon. I'm Katie Wyndham. And Austin, there's been a coaching shakeup in college football, and more specifically the SEC recently. Over the weekend, Jimbo Fisher is out at Texas A&M after 6 seasons. On Monday, Zach Arnett is out at Mississippi State, just in his first year there, but he kind of stepped in the interim last year after the passing of Mike Leach. And so, ironically, those two teams played each other this weekend, and both their coaches are out. But kind of how do you think this impacts with two SEC programs, two SEC West programs, even though I guess the West is about to go away, having head coaching changes, kind of what kind of impacts does that have on Alabama?
Yeah, on the surface level, it was a pretty bizarre situation. I mean, obviously the two coaches played against each other, or not, the coaches didn't play, obviously, but their teams played against each other on Saturday. And for Jimbo Fisher, it's not, very common that you win a game by 41 points and the next day you get fired. But I think but now that looking at the reports, they had kind of already decided on, it looks like Thursday before the game, that they were probably going to be finished with Jimbo Fisher, and they kind of accepted that they were going to pay that large buyout, which a lot of people didn't think they would pay, myself included in that conversation, just because that's a lot of money. But if Texas A&M feels comfortable and is okay with signing checks to him over the next decade, then that's their decision, and they better get somebody better. I think it's the only explanation for that. For Zach Arnett, not too surprising. I thought the hiring of him was a little different, a little weird. Obviously, they had an unprecedented situation on their hands when their coach passed away, and it kind of puts your foot behind the eight ball, and you don't really know who to go with. And I think that at that time they made a comfortable hire, and that was probably the smart decision. But he just really didn't have a lot of success this year as a head coach. And I'm usually not the person to jump on guys year one, but I just didn't see a lot going in the right direction this season for that program, and that it was probably the right decision on their part. So. But both these coaches, obviously SEC West guys, that division is going to end after the year. But recruiting, I mean, you think about Mississippi State and Alabama being the closest, two universities in the SEC, and how that's going to have maybe an impact on maybe Alabama can get some more Mississippi recruits. And for Texas A&M, I mean, they've been a national player in the recruiting thing over the last 5-6 years. So with Jimbo Fisher out, you open up questions to. Okay, I mean, we don't really know how that Texas A&M program was ran, but are these going to be a bunch of guys that choose to stay at Texas A&M because they want to play there, or is these guys that were there because they liked Jimbo and maybe there were some good NIL perks, and now that he's gone, maybe they decide they're going to head out and go elsewhere, and maybe that means Alabama. So it's going to have pretty big ramification, I think, for Texas A&M. I think Mississippi State's they're not exactly the player that A&M is in the national sphere of things, but it could still have some kind of regional impact on recruiting. So it was a little bit surprising. I mean, anytime coaches get fired in the middle of the season, I think it's surprising. And obviously Zach Arnett didn't even make it a full season. So that in itself is also surprising. So a lot to dive in there. I'm sure we'll hear more and figure out more as the weeks go on. But yeah, two pretty big coaching changes going on in the SEC.
Yeah, it's when you were talking about kind of looking at some of the players A&M has on the recruiting trail, these two programs have gone head to head a lot with Saban and Jimbo Fisher. And yeah, I just thought back when you were saying that about Terrion telling us that he thought Evan Stewart was going to come to Alabama. So I'm not like, sure. Who knows? You never know with the NIL and the portal and all this stuff, but there's guys like that at A&M that were, top recruits that were deciding between Alabama and Texas A&M. And now that their head coach is leaving, there's a good chance. I'm not saying I have no knowledge of that. I'm just saying as an example, there's guys like that could be looking to the portal, and Alabama could become a place for them. And then, on their recruiting front now for guys that are still being recruited, it's kind of a big deal. And I think you're kind of in a situation this year at Alabama where in the past, a lot of times Saban coordinators are going to be looked at for head coaching vacancies. It's kind of different this year with Kevin Steele and Tommy Rees. Tommy Rees is obviously still pretty young, and Kevin Steele's kind of on the other end, a little older and veteran, and probably not going to be hired for a head coaching job. But you have other assistants at Alabama that could be, taken to go be assistants at whoever these coaches or these schools hires their head coaches. And so whenever there's shakeups like this, it does have some trickle down effects. I'm sure you think who would A&M ideally love to hire? I'm sure they would love to hire Nick Saban with all the money they have, but Alabama fans, I think you can sleep well at night knowing that there's no shot Saban would go to Texas A&M or really anywhere at this point. He's made that pretty clear. He and Miss Terry love Alabama.